What's happening? Mike, I got to tell you something. I know you already know this, but I got to make a confession. Practice was canceled, and I went to Crumble Cookies. And I told you I wasn't going to eat one, Mike. But God, dog, is that – those things are good, man. I'm just letting you know if LSU's practice is canceled again, I'm probably going to go there again.
So are you saying you did end up eating one before you got home?
I ate a bite of one. The milk chocolate chip had me rolling. I'm just going to throw that out there. So next time practice is canceled, I got to have one, Mike. They were really good.
Well, at least you didn't have to wait in line for an hour like most people were doing when they first opened up.
I'm just going to go when it rains. I mean, I think it's a great time to go. Anyway, Mike Scarborough from TigerBait.com is our guest. We'll let you guys know everywhere that you can go to his website, subscribe, and everything like that. Mike, I want to start off here. Ed Orgeron, look, Mike, tell me I'm not crazy. Ed's got a swag back, right? Like, I mean, the confidence that he's oozing night in and night out when you hear him, I'm not losing my mind. Am I? I mean, he's got that edge back that we're seeing, correct?
I think so. I think there's something to be said for these coaches having been with each other all summer long, having a spring underneath their belt. I mean, I feel like I'm always saying the same things about what happened last year, just being an anomaly. Your national championship hangover. Your all the opt-outs, no spring cut short, no summer get-togethers, kids off campus, kids with COVID, injuries. I mean, it was just an absolute mess. Bad hires. I just think there's something to be said about how eager this team is because of how hungry they are, how embarrassed they were after last season, and I just think. I think the new guys have probably brought some infectious enthusiasm with them, and I think that's why I think a lot of people are starting to really open their eyes to LSU. There's a lot more people regionally and nationally that are starting to say things about LSU that they weren't saying several months ago, and it's not just the local people that are thinking 10 wins is reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, my good friend Michael Bratton over at SEC Mike, I mean, he picks him, Mike, to win the SEC West. He talked, and talking with him, he's talking about the depth and experience, and he thinks, Barrett Saleh, I think is how you say his name, he's got LSU winning the West. So I think a lot of people, when they start looking at this team, they're saying, hey, look, they got a lot of depth, they got a lot of experience, they got a good quarterback returning. That Miles has been what he's been, so we'll have to wait and see. We do have some questions already firing in here, Mike, kind of to the same point that we're talking. Craig asks, is there any similarities about 2021 team and 2019 in practice thus far? Mike, I said this on my show this week. Ball's not dropping the ground. I was out there with you. We did your show right after practice. Mike, they look smooth. Do you see the same as well?
I do. I just think there's a lot of talent. Certainly, we're given – obviously, you've got multiple new coaches. We're assuming that the offensive line is going to be much more improved. You got a veteran group there. I've never been one that's picked on the running backs because I felt all along when you've got that many bodies there, you're going to have a solution or two or three. Right. So that's never concerned me. And the same thing goes at wide receiver. While some might think you're top heavy with Butte, people aren't talking enough about Corey Moore, Jeray Jenkins. And on and on. I mean, there's just so many bodies there. And, we're hearing things about Brian Thomas now and Jack Besh, just the time that we're seeing out there, how fantastic he looks. I just think, look, there's so much talent there. And then there is the question marks. I mean, there's the doomsday scenario if Max gets hurt. There's a doomsday scenario if we have one of those famous LSU issues where someone's missing games and it's a undisclosed team, situation, right. Which we get every year, don't we? And so we're not aware of those right now. Those usually we usually find out those on game day, right. when they're not running out on the field to play. So you just don't. But if there's knock on wood, no significant catastrophic injuries between now and the UCLA game, and of course the first scrimmage is on Saturday. I'm still sticking with my 10-2 prediction. I'm not backing off of it. And there was times with, worrying about Miles Brennan not be there as a number 2 because I was thinking Max the whole way, and then Rosenthal. But I'm not going to budge off 10-2, and I still think if Max goes the whole way, there could be some magical things happen to get you to 11-1 or better, and then those guys that you named earlier are going to look like geniuses.
My guy, we got a lot of questions firing in here for you. I'm going to get to them, but I got a couple questions to follow up with that. Then does it make? I'm not saying does it make sense because I know it makes sense. But Ed talks about tonight that they were going to put in packages for Derek Stingley. I know it was a promise, but Mike, they're so stacked there. Like, how do you how do you come up with scenarios? I mean, do you put them in the red zone? Do you? I mean, there's so many questions there. But do you think that that's I'm not going to say smart move. It's just a question mark that I have. When you heard Ed say that today, I guess what was your reaction to it?
Well, and we talked about it on our show last night, and I know you've talked about it before. I don't see why you would have Stingley on punt returns. I think you've got enough athletes on that football team to get the job done. If it's not Trey Palmer, I'm all for Jack Besh or Sage Ryan. Jack Besh did it fantastically for St. Thomas More and was an absolute weapon, and he's for sure-handed. So, but
can you imagine a tight end on return, Mike, really quickly? I mean,
yeah.
Anyway, continue.
I didn't even think about that. But of course, he's a hybrid to me.
I mean, it's not like he can. I mean, I'm just saying, like, how talented is that kid? That's my point, though. Like, you got so much depth there.
Yeah, but as far as Stingley at wide receiver, I mean, I know they promised him, but I'm all for it. I'm all for even just saying that you've got packages for him, and you absolutely don't.
I didn't really think about that scenario off the top of my head. Like, are you telling Alabama, hey, we're coming out here with Derek Stingley, he lines up, and then so many people focus on him that you run something else? I guess that was a scenario I didn't really think about because we're only 10 minutes out from the press conference. That's interesting.
Well, and then it is something that, of course, I don't know what the history of gadget plays and trick plays have been in the last 2 decades, but you always seem to use them against Florida. That seems like the game that they do theirs and LSU does theirs. So do you plant the seed where you bring in Stingley early in the season for 1 or 2 drives for something because you want to put it on film, and then all of a sudden you've got it there for Florida, or you hold it all the way to A&M, or maybe you use it in Tuscaloosa. I'm not against any of that.
Could you imagine, Mike? Could you imagine if they put Stingley in some kind of package against UCLA, and you gotta put a package in there because of how great you like that? You bring up a great point. You put that package in. God forbid the kid runs a Wildcat, right? Like maybe he gives it to TDP. I mean, and then all of a sudden, all year long, Mike, you got a game plan for that. So I think it's a good thing. It's crazy to think about the depth there. We have a question here, and I know that me and you have talked about this. It's from Roderick. He says, #ask Mike, do you think Emory is stepping up, or is Ty Davis Price and him neck and neck regardless? It could be in the backfield. Mike, Ed's talked about this a lot, though, right? He said, hey, you two guys get in there. And I thought at least, Amari Goodwin was looking good. And he says Corey Connor can't be tackled. Those two guys got to step up, though, right? Like,
yeah, but there's this. How many times over the last several years have we seen, or last year, and then of course when they were freshmen, where you thought maybe you had an idea of which of those guys was going to separate themselves from the other, and then the other one asserts themselves. They've been neck and neck for so long. Trying to pick a winner between those two is so difficult.
Right.
And one might be more effective in one game than the other. I don't know where you need to have one guy be the bell cow. Continue to do what LSU has done through 4 coaches now. DiNardo, Saban, Miles, and now Orgeron. It's running by committee. I mean, Clyde was the one that was probably utilized the most without getting spelled a whole lot, more than any other running back group in years. So, that's always been the hallmark of LSU is having 3 guys that carry the load in a game. And then LSU running backs after their careers over at LSU have a lot of tread left on the tire.
That's true. I mean, look, Leonard got a lot of carries, but Mike, he got spelled a lot by Geis and others. And look what he's doing in Tampa. I mean, he talks about, if you look at film of him just lifting weights, I mean, Jesus Christ, he's deadlifting like 670 pounds. I mean, it's just like stupid stuff like that. I do want to get on the defensive side before we get into some recruiting, because we got a lot of recruiting questions piling up. Mike, Jared Small continues to come up. Now, I've been the guy. I went on a rant last night. I don't care if he's a walk-on. I don't care if he's a number one, a 5-star guy. If he can play, Mike, he can play. Like, the kid's got to see the field. If they have confidence in him, like, roll him out there, right?
No, and I like it because Blake Baker comes in and he has no preconceived notions about who's he's dealing with, who's put in the time and who hasn't. He's just looking at talent and who can get the job done, who knows what they're supposed to do, where they're line up, what their assignments are. And if Small ends up being the guy that gets it done better than everybody else, it doesn't matter to me whether he's got some paperwork filed somewhere that's different than everybody else's.
Me too. And look, the good thing is there, Mike, you got a lot of depth. I mean, crazy amount of depth there. And
that was one of what 2 or 3 positions that you were saying was a weak spot. Safety was another. I'm not even. There's not in my mind, there isn't a weak spot on defense anywhere unless all of a sudden you have multiple injuries at a particular spot.
Well, and we talk about that now. Stingley's out for a little bit. He's going to be back Monday from Ed. And then you got Dwight McGlothern. When asked about it last night, Ed kind of shrugged that off. Yeah, he's on a scooter, whatever. He's going to be back. He's just shrugging it off. And it feels like, Mike, that it gives a lot of guys a lot of opportunities to make plays. And we've seen that in the spring. Ricks goes out. Then all of a sudden, here comes McGlothern. A guy that's making some buzz, at least on my show every night, is Major Burns. A guy that you watch come up, a guy that has been in this Louisiana recruiting cycle, goes to Georgia, come back. But, Mike, we got film being released of this kid just making plays all over the field. Even in recruiting, what did you like about Major Burns now that you're seeing translated onto the field?
Well, the thing about Major is probably some of the things that I also probably didn't like a little bit, but because he's kind of got that Elias, he's kind of like Eli Ricks. I'm still going to call him Elias. He's like Eli Ricks in a lot of ways, that he likes to talk trash and do all that, but the long limbs, the run, the confidence level, he's just a heck of an athlete, and I don't like the way that transpired during his recruiting process, and LSU's darn lucky to have him back.
And it's crazy, the 1-year transfer rule, how that happens. There's some rumors out there about Eric Gilbert, and then now you got Major Burns now coming to LSU. I mean, it's crazy, Mike, how this all turns around.
And look, what that does for LSU, beyond just Major Burns and him filling a spot and him being a guy that we think is going to be a major asset to the defense, it's also what that does to LSU with Madison Prep, a school that's going to have talent every single year.
There might be a defensive lineman over there you might want. I'm just throwing that out there. A kid you might want,
and very high demand, and that's going to get more and more in the coming weeks.
Absolutely, Mike. One thing, and I don't know, because we really haven't heard a lot about this, and I know that you and Buddy talked about it last night, but something I haven't really heard a lot of. There are 3 phases of football. Okay, we know what Cade York's going to give you. But Mike, who do you think right now is going to be the punter? Look, people can make fun of Alabama and everything that they want to, but when you got J.K. Scott, you've always had punters that are averaging 48 to 52 yards per punt. Mike, that's flipping field position now. Who do you think can win that position? I know you talked about Avery Atkins before. Do you think that he can win it, or do you think the true freshman is going to be?
I think because Peyton Todd was so prolific at West Monroe, and we hadn't seen Avery Atkins punt, everybody just assumed it was a done deal that Peyton Todd would be the guy. And so I'll say this. If Avery Atkins ends up beating out Peyton Todd, what does that say about his ability as a punter, as well as we know what he could do on kickoff returns, on kickoffs? So LSU wins either way.
I agree with that. And look, Avery has been I mean, Buddy Sanjay calls him the best kickoff man in LSU history. So
I think
look,
he's right.
I think he's right too. I mean,
No,
make the argument, Mike.
because he does it every time.
I know.
You get desensitized to it, or you're spoiled rotten. You don't even flinch an eye or think it's a big deal. It's almost like the Ferguson brothers. You know, they're your deep snapper for years and years. They never make a mistake, and so you take them for granted. And so when Buddy says that, it's like, and you think about it, it's like, I mean, for real. I mean, a lot of those balls go over the yellow painted fence. Almost
Right.
a lot of them do.
Right. That's right. Well, and Greg McManus talked about that when he was with the Saints. He talked about when a kicker gets a touchback, the injury rate of the team drops down, Mike, by 20%. Think about that. If a guy's going to kick a touchback, the injury rate of your team going down, that's another big thing. And obviously, Les, God bless it, man. I don't even know what to say about that.
It used to be this time of year when we would be talking about, hey, which of the freshmen are going to be, guys that we're going to see earlier? How many true freshmen are going to play? We used to constantly talk about kickoff team, right? And that's where your newcomers would make a mark. Well, you don't make a mark at LSU with Avery Atkins kicking off.
No, you don't.
So there's no returns.
Peyton Tide would have to be the guy.
Huh?
Peyton Tide would have to be the guy if you're going to make the mark there, right? I mean, Peyton Tide, Cade York. I mean,
I'm talking about your coverage team.
Your
freshman athletes that are running downfield to make tackles.
Like, Jarvis Landry in 11.
There's no action there for them.
Right. I mean, you remember Jarvis Landry in 11. What was it, Auburn, Mike? He had the huge hit and the fumble. I mean, like, you're right. I mean, that was the time that you saw the freshmen doing stuff like that.
And by the way, that was the time right there where there was actually some debate about Jarvis going to defense.
Really?
That's
okay.
True.
So talk to me about that. So what was that? What was that about?
No,
I mean,
the whole thing with Jarvis was anybody who followed him recruiting, he could have easily have been an All-American safety if he wanted to be. No doubt.
Could you imagine moving that man to safety? I mean, seriously though, could you have imagined? And Mike, and here's the crazy thing with that DB core. I mean, if you're talking about Tyron, you're talking about Claiborne, you're talking about Jalen Collins that got drafted, Reed. Could you have imagined him back there? I mean, that would have been crazy.
Because you think about, oh man, what a bad trajectory for his career. I don't believe that. I think Jarvis Landry absolutely could have been an All-American as a safety.
That's crazy. Mike Scarborough
that's how because he has a defensive mentality as a receiver.
He does. And look, he can chuck that son of a gun when talking about throwing it. I mean, look at what he does in the NFL. I mean, Mike, he threw a ball last year 65 yards. 65 yards in a game. I mean, he took a crow hop and chunked it. I mean, the kid's just an overall athlete, man, which is just crazy. Mike, we do have some questions in here about recruiting, and I can't
hold on. That makes me also reminds me of Michael Clayton laying some wood on special teams. I mean, we've had some receivers over the years that could absolutely do it. I think Jamar Chase could do some damage on somebody.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, because of how physical he was. I'm trying to think who else would have. I don't think Jefferson could have done it or Marshall. But you're right. I mean, those physical guys, that's funny. I remember Michael Clayton laying the wood. And where did Clayton go to high school?
I guarantee you that there's somebody watching your show that remembers which game it was. And I remember where it was a return. But there was a special teams play that Michael Clayton made in his career at LSU that it was like, man, you when it was over, you wanted to call a chiropractor for the other guy. It was bad.
Hey, man, all I'm going to say, chiropractor changed my life. I'm just going to throw that out there. Mike, somebody has been asking this, and it's been a constant thing, but there was a number 83 at tight end. Somebody being moved. It seems like Orgeron confirmed that wasn't Landon Jackson, but Tyler Cormier asked, do we have a update? Because there's been like this secret little rumor about number 83 moving over to tight end. Do you have any update or anything on that?
No, I don't.
Okay.
But now you got me wondering who that might be.
I remember that you and Buddy said that you could see a number 83 working with tight ends, and then a couple of people have mentioned it. and they were thinking it was Landon Jackson because they said it was a taller kid, but they couldn't confirm who it was. We would have known if we were out of practice today, Mike, with the damn rain. Who would have known? Mike, let's get to some recruiting. I can't find this.
Maybe it was a kid from Mobile.
Might be. I mean, I'm not 100% sure on that. I can't.
He's got the body. He's got the body for it.
We'll see. Look, we're gonna definitely see. I don't know who that is.
I'm just throwing stuff out there. I'm gonna have to dig for you.
All right, Mike. We're getting some recruiting questions on here. Look, a lot of people are asking the same question. I mean, it's been about 2 weeks since Emory Jones committed. It's kind of been a little quiet on the recruiting trail. I know that you've had a lot of updates on TigerBait.com. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? Is there anybody that you think that could potentially commit to LSU soon in 22?
Yeah, I think that there can be some stuff happen. I know there's been some talk about Jamon Tapp this week from Ascension Catholic. What you're having right now is everybody's just knee deep in football practice, both your college teams and your high school teams. And that's why it's slow. This is also the time of year where a lot of recruiting analysts, regional and national, will actually take vacations because this is a slow spot.
So do you think, Mike, because high school football is about to be around the corner, could you see a couple of months of it being a little quiet on the LSU trail?
No.
Okay.
I think there's going to be some action before the first high school weekend, the week of the UCLA game, which would be the start of high school. I think there could be something there, and if not, the following week, or both.
A lot of people have asked about Jacoby Matthews. Now, Mike, we know that he went to Texas A&M. I know that you've talked about it, but just for our listeners, they've heard what I've had to say, but you cover recruiting better than anybody. Are you having a little bit of confidence that Jacoby might make his way back in this class?
I do. But we're in a strange new world with the way things are transpiring with name, image, and likeness, and we're gonna have to wait to see how some of this plays out. And it's going to get even more interesting once the college football season starts, and there's home football games, and guys are going on unofficial and official visits. I think there's a whole lot of people out there that see the NIL deal, and they're going above and beyond what's actually is a part of that whole thing. And it is the wild, wild west, but I think some people are trying to make it wilder than it's supposed to be.
I want to stick on there for just a second and get your opinion on this. We saw the BYU sponsor paying for the walk-ons, paying all their tuition today. We saw Brandon Landry kind of doing some of the same. Mike, there are rules and regulations per states in name, image, and likeness, but they don't have a penalty or fine associated with a lot of those states. There's no real action that can be taken in criminal court or civil court currently with that going on. So, Mike, my question is, so if someone breaks a rule, so to speak, what the frick do you do? You're not going to take to court. Is LSU going to sue Texas A&M for something, or is it going to be vice versa? Then what court is it in?
Yeah,
what do you do there?
I don't know. I mean, are you going to see it? I think we're going to see some crazy stuff. We're going to hear stories. There's going to get stuff confirmed. And then, like you said, the NCAA has no teeth. The only thing they can do now is really officiate and watch you if you're contacting recruits in a dead period. I mean, because this NIL thing just changes everything. I mean, I think we're going to see some strange scenarios that we can't even think of right now.
Mike, the walk-on thing, people are calling me crazy. But again, I've made this scenario before. I think it's going to happen, Mike. Imagine you have a class where you got your 25 scholarship limit done with, or you're close upon it. Mike, what if you got a walk-on and hypothetically, AYS wants to sponsor the kid and give him tuition and pay him stuff? I mean, the sky's the limit on this one, right? Like the days of the numbers are done with. I mean, 25 is over with in some aspects, right?
Well, the problem with the walk-on deal is, and I would need to brush up on that. The reason why I don't think that works is because with walk-ons, they have certain dates where they can actually show up and be a part of your program. They have limited access to the nutritional center. There's all sorts of things that don't apply to walk-ons that applies to full scholarship players.
Do you think they'll change it?
And then it's also a deal where at some point, if they're depending on how many, they're probably gonna have to beef up a lot of those rules, because you can't all of a sudden be playing that walk-on game and like Nebraska 40 years ago.
Right, like Bear Bryant. Hey kid, you're on the swimming scholarship. I mean, I just think, Mike, if there's a will, there's a way. I could be wrong there, but I feel like if Ed Orgeron, Nick Saban, all these great recruiters are going to find a way to do it, but I might be crazy. All right, we do have this has been an ongoing thing, Mike, for 2 weeks in my chat. But Henry Pugh ask Mike, what's our chances on Harold Perkins and his uncle? Everybody doesn't just want Harold Perkins; they want the uncle to commit too. But how's your confidence on Harold Perkins?
So the uncle has become a folk hero.
A folk hero. It's every night. Somebody's talking about his uncle. They want him to commit. They want him to sign a national letter of intent. It's been crazy, but let's talk about Harold Perkins.
I like the glass. I like the glass he was holding in the video. But yeah, no, I like LSU's in a good spot with Harold Perkins. What's that?
Was that before or after 12 o'clock in Texas? I mean,
yeah. I did look like a nice spot and a nice balcony. I'll give Texas A&M that.
I agree.
But I think LSU's in a good spot for Harold Perkins. Obviously, Texas A&M's battling there. But that's one that Blake Baker's is really forged a strong relationship with in recent and all the months he's been here.
Mike, I've said this because I'm not someone who follows and does recruiting like you, but I do have something. Last question, I'll get you out of here. You've been fantastic as always. Do you see? Look, I don't want to put this label on this past class, but everything that we're seeing, this past class, number one, it's a two-part question. Do you think that this last class was the best that Ed has had from top to bottom? And number two, do you think that the role in recruiting, this snowball effect that they're having right now with all the great talent in the state, do you think that this is going to stop anytime soon with how great these classes and the talent in the state's been?
Well, like right now, I'm starting to wonder. There's a few positions that I'm wondering if the gravy train might be having a little gap in the next couple of years. There's a couple positions that I want to see for 24 that I'm kind of scratching my head, like why isn't some names popping up? So I want to see how that plays out during the football season. But I think with what's left on the board and how special this 22 class is, I think this has the opportunity of being Ed Orgeron's best class. The Walker Howard, Will Campbell, Emery, and Jacoby Matthews, if he gets back in, and others. If get Shaz Preston on board, get Kendrick Law, obviously battling Alabama for him. You got Armula down in Florida, who I think LSU's is well positioned for as another offensive lineman. You add that to the group. And then I want to see what Coach Davis does. Not only is there maybe some other offensive linemen that come into town for visits in the fall for 22, but I think we're going to see a big number of class of 23 kids that make their way to Tiger Stadium for unofficial visits for football games this fall. And I want to see what those guys look like and where they're coming from. The fact that you had two kids from Missouri there for Boys from the Boot, I like seeing. And both of them highly touted.
That's interesting, Mike. That's very interesting.
And those were obviously relationships that he was forging while at Arkansas, which we knew that at some point we would see. Guys that he had on his board, and he was forging relationships at Arkansas, and then he would bring and you would add that to the LSU's board.
All I'm going to say is this. My man Brad Davis can recruit now, Mike, and he can – look, if you have good, productive offensive line recruiting, That's another part in this. And what was it? What did I think Will Campbell made a statement to people too. He goes, "Hey man, there was nobody else outside of LSU that recruited me harder than Brad Davis. I told him every week that I wasn't flipping, and he goes, I'm going to make you flip every week." I mean, it's just crazy what he would say. But Mike, like always, you've been fantastic. I know that everybody knows that you're killing it at Tiger Bait, but they need to go subscribe to everything that you're doing. Tell them where they can go and what they need to do to be a
Man,
subscriber.
thanks for the kind words, and thanks for all you do. And by the way, we were supposed to have Blake out there with us today. Well, we were on our way to practice this afternoon, and we got the text saying that it wouldn't happen. So we were going to have Blake with us for another instant analysis, and so we hopefully get him out there sometime soon. But yeah, go to tigerbait.com, subscribe. We want to have you. $99 a year. Choose that package. You basically get 3 months free when you do that with the annual package. And a lot of the stuff is free as well. Check out our YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on Tiger Bait, and our Facebook page as well. And but go to Tiger Bait, subscribe. We want to have you as a part of our community.
My man, you've been fantastic. As always, we'll talk to you soon, and you have a good night.
All right, you too, Blake. Thanks, man.
That's Mike Scarborough from tigerbait.com. Always